This week in CIST 1530 Web Graphics 1, we're going to look at lesson 10, which will be painting with a mixer brush. In this lesson, you're going to look at how the bristle tips work and how a mixer brush will differentiate between a traditional brush. So a couple things you'll look at is the customizing your brush settings, how to clean up the brush, mixing colors, how to create a custom brush preset, and also using wet and dry brushes to blend color. You see on the screen, this will be your ending file for your palette, and then we'll see that the ending file for your landscape versus how you start out. So starting out, your landscape image will look like this, and your palette will start out just a blank palette. First, let's get started with your mixing brush. Your mixing brush is going to be found underneath your brush tool. So you will see you have your mixing brush tool located here. It may just be found on your tools panel. Okay, once you have this, also if you go to Window and then Brushes or Brush Settings, it's going to bring up your Brush Settings and Brushes dialog box. Okay, we will be going back through here. This is one of the places that you can select different brush tips in your brushes. We'll also be going over loading the brushes. I've already loaded these into my Photoshop, but we'll still go through the process of loading brushes in. Brush setting, this is where you can use these settings to customize a brush. So you can adjust the settings, and you'll be doing that in this lesson to create a custom brush setting. Now, another place you can adjust the brush settings is in your option bar. So bringing this down, you can adjust the size, the hardness. You can also load some preset brushes here as well. You also have the option with these option menu to import brushes here as well, or rename a brush, or create a custom brush and save it here. As I've said in the past, Photoshop gives you multiple different ways to accomplish the same task. Okay, first we're going to start off though looking at our mixer brush. So we'll make sure that we have the mixer brush tool selected. And we'll see just a quick demonstration of this. So I've got blue selected here. And at the top, you do have other options as far as setting whether it's going to be a dry paint, a moist paint, wet, very wet. These are the different settings you can use to mix your paint. And we'll take a couple look at some of these. Let's start off with dry. So in dry, I'm going to paint in the blue color. Let's just say I'm going to paint this little area here. With the mixing brush still selected, if I change it to a different color, you see that using dry on dry, pretty much it's just going to replace one on the other one. So if I'm going to change one to, let's change to wet. Okay, so when it's wet, you'll see that the paint is more like it's being applied as it's wet. You see it's not as dark, not as thick and dry as the dry setting is. And when I change the color, you'll see that these really start to mix in the image here more so than here. So I'm going to undo my history, and we'll go through these steps. So to select these colors, I'm going to use the eyedropper tool. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select the red from the red tube of paint. Next, I'm going to make sure that I have my mixer brush selected here. And I'm going to choose the correct in my brushes, I'm going to choose, make sure I have the soft round selected. So see, so set my brush tip size. I'm going to set it at 30. I'm going to turn all these back off to what they're supposed to be. Now, using this, I want to make sure this is back on dry. Okay, so we'll go through this. I'm going to set the wet to 0 and the low to 50%. And right now, the mix is not, it's not something that's going to be used right now because we're not mixing colors right now. Once we start mixing colors, we will look at that as well. So when we paint with this, see that I'm getting a solid red line with my paint. Now, one thing to look for with the mixing brush tool is as I paint and I hold down the mouse button, eventually you see that it starts disappearing. I start running out of paint. So the paint is being removed from the image because it's like my paint brush is running out of paint on it. And so it's going to fade out. So the next step after I've painted over this is now I'm going to choose the blue. And in here I'm going to choose a different brush. I'm going to choose the round sketch ballpoint pen. And this will be in, let me go to my brushes here. This may not be installed on my system. There it is. The round sketch ballpoint pen is chosen here. Because you see it does give me a brush tip. So as I paint, you'll see that it does give me different brush tips than what I originally had selected. So using different brush tips, I am going to get different brush sizes, different brush designs, and things of that nature. So mixing the colors, let's mix the yellow, for example. So if I'm mixing the yellow, you'll see that, once again, dry on dry. If I'm going to choose a wet paint, you'll see that it kind of blends in with the other color, so it gives me a new effect, a new look. And this is some stuff I can use these skills to achieve the effects such as this, to where I can use this to blend the two colors together, as you guys will be doing in this chapter. Now, to load a brush, you can come to, first let's talk about creating your own brush presets. Okay, so if I come into my brushes panel, and in here I choose my brush tip, and then different options in here. So I can change different options. Say I want to change some texture. I can come in and choose to save this as a new brush preset. I would give it a name, and then, so I'm going to change this to new preset. This is now stored in my brushes so that I can quickly choose this brush. And it's going to have the same settings that I just applied to it, so I can reuse that and save it. Now I can also load in presets, brushes as well, by clicking the hamburger menu and coming down to import brushes. So in this, I can then navigate to where my brushes are stored and then simply click load. And those brushes will then be imported into your brushes panel. As you see, they'll be located in this situation down here. So chapter 10 is a very short chapter. It's working with mixing colors. It's working with loading brushes, changing brushes settings. Now you can also change the color of a brush, located up here as well. So if I need to change the color I'm painting in, and then I can change the options here as well.